For many years, it was just a journey of nothingness, always open to starting a family, but just had no results.
Infertility comes in many forms. We've heard from people who have experienced years of confusing symptoms culminating in a diagnosis of endometriosis when they started trying to conceive. Or people with PCOS who were maybe diagnosed in their teenage years and always knew in the back of their mind that they might find themselves needing a little help conceiving when the time comes. But today we're going to hear a different kind of story. Today's guest didn't have any reason to think conceiving would be difficult. And so, when it wasn't working for a while, she didn't think much of it. But as months turned into years, she finally decided to seek answers for how to change her journey of nothingness. And today, she's going to tell us all about it. I'm Dan Bolger with Progyny, and this is Infertility. Hello and welcome. As I mentioned at the top, today we're going to get to know Deanna Allison. As we just stated at the top, she and her husband had been open to having kids, but weren't experiencing any results.
I was never a person who cried every month or, felt disappointment. I'm very much a person who felt like it would happen when it was meant to happen. And if it didn't happen, there was probably something else on the journey for me. I never really felt like I was meant to be a mom, or I wasn't meant to be a mom. It just felt like if that's what's going to happen, it will happen.
So for a long time, the couple was content to just see what happens. But then a life change led them to consider a different approach.
We lived in Dallas for a long time in our married life, and then my husband was transferred to the Houston area. And Houston's the biggest medical city in Texas. So the layer of doctors, if you will, there is pretty massive. A lot of good specialties, a lot of good specialists. And in the Dallas area with my Dallas-based OB-GYN, he was really doing fertility as sort of part of his practice. It wasn't his primary practice. And what I do know about fertility is it's very specialized, and almost your entire practice needs to be consumed with doing that. It's very time sensitive as a journey. And he recommended that we do IVF many, many years back. I would be a good candidate for IVF was what I was told. And no testing, no blood work to support that diagnosis. So it really felt like a guess at that point. And upon moving, I had to pick all new doctors anyway. And my husband and I sort of discussed it and just decided we want a specialist this time. We don't really want to guess. Don't have good enough insurance coverage for the guesswork, so we need to find someone who really does this as a specialty. We had a moment in our family just to pause what we had been doing because it felt like we were about to hit a turning point where I was about to get more knowledge and could select a doctor who really might fit our scenario a little bit better.
Not only were they now living in Houston, where they felt they had more options for fertility specialists, but she was also just about to partake on a project at work that would significantly impact her journey. See, she works at Bread Financial, a tech-forward financial services company, as Director of Benefits, Well-Being, and Financial Programs. And a big part of her job is to select and manage employer-sponsored benefits. Well, around this time in her story, she and her team were in the process of searching for a vendor to provide fertility and family-building benefits for Bread Financial associates.
In the role I do here at Bread Financial, one of the things that we're always looking at is, are we solving the need? With any product we have, is the need that we're actually trying to solve for being solved? And in talking to a couple of the members of the team, we really, decades apart. My boss had been through a struggle with fertility 20 years earlier. Someone on our team had been through one about 10 years ago. And as we were venting about just, it's hard to pick specialists, it's hard to know what to go after, and it's hard not to be frustrated and hurt and emotional along the way, it really became evident no matter how long you've been doing this or how long ago your journey might have been, patient experience is still the same. It's a frustrating business. You walk into a doctor's office and you're going to see a list of procedures that price from $750 to $70,000. And the first question you tend to have is, what can you afford, or what does your insurance coverage look like? And you really had to start having the conversation about not what was the best path for you or what was going to be the most efficient path for you, but what you could afford. As a team, we just really came to a place where we said we have to be able to do something here as an organization. It felt like a turning point. At that point, time was not on my side personally. I had been married for 15 years at that point, and I was no longer as young as I was. And you just can't mess around with bad experiences or slow results. You really need to get into the meat of what your issue is and treat it quickly.
So she and her team started investigating options. Prior to this, Bread Financial actually did offer coverage for fertility treatments. In fact, they were early pioneers in offering that kind of benefit. But the offering they had was limited and didn't include a lot of support that she and the team knew people needed. Now, don't worry, this won't become a Progyny commercial, but yes, Bread Financial ended up adding the Progyny fertility benefit, and Deanna was able to experience the benefit firsthand.
It's really an overhaul of the existing system, and it's a much more modern approach to fertility treatment. I thought it was fascinating that you would go into a doctor's office, a really highly a really high quality network provider, and you'd see their metrics. You'd be able to talk to an actual expert, a patient care advocate before you walked in and even met with your doctor. And they would be able to tell you, listen, we do this for a business and we know what this looks like and what it shouldn't look like. And here's the doctors we think you need to see based on your situation. I was given results about blog posts that my doctor did. I was given information about what his practice primarily treated. My particular doctor tended to practice a lot on folks over 40. Big differentiator, right? Somebody who's had success for people over 40. He loved the Progyny product as well because it allowed he and I to have a very fluid conversation about what efficient treatment would look like. What this coverage allowed me to do was to walk into the doctor's office and instead of having a money conversation, have a healthcare conversation. And I just felt like I was in better hands all of a sudden. And really, we've been, at this point, it's 18 years into marriage and we have no baby. We have no failed pregnancies. It's just nothingness. And we were able to jump right in and start our first round of IVF.
Now she had a great benefit behind her, but no matter the support that someone has, IVF can still be extremely intimidating.
I don't think I slept, not a wink, the first night. They give you a packet of information. It's a lot of every protocol they will do, but mostly focused on IVF. You learn it's a lot of injections. It's a lot of medication management, making sure you have the medication on hand. A lot of it's got to be refrigerated and handled specially. I think once I opened the door to just asking for help and saying to my husband, I need you to handle medication. I need you to handle talking to the doctor about it, dispensing it, dosing it all up, what days and times, what we really need to do here. I need you to handle that. I need to be a patient only. So in order to relax and trust the process, I had to ask for help. And he really showed up. I can't, compliment him enough on, he did every appointment he was at. He read every note they had. He asked for demos at the doctor's office on how he could do this stuff. And he was amazing.
I want to say kudos to her husband there. Support can come from many places for those who need it. And for those approaching treatments like this with a partner, it's extremely important for partners to step up. So with support from home and work, she went ahead with an IVF cycle.
I did one protocol where I would call it just the standard protocol. That was what Dr. Stewart at Aspire in Houston, asked of us. Just try the protocol, right? Let's just start out of the gate and see what we get. And so that is, again, it's a 2-week protocol, roughly. And they measure everything. You go in every other day to get your blood work done. And I had really good results for his practice. I think I got 15 eggs just out of that first attempt. 10 of those, if I recall, would take fertilization in the process. Unfortunately, none of them matured to what they would call the blastocyst phase or became viable embryos that would later be frozen and transferred. We got 0 results. And what was interesting was the 0 results told him far more than anything else.
Yes, there is a diagnostic element to IVF. Doing a round of IVF will show the doctor how your body is responding to the medications, how many eggs mature if they fertilize, and how many fertilized eggs will mature into day 3, then day 5 blastocysts. But, of course, the point of IVF isn't to diagnose anything. It's to have a baby. So they got ready for a second attempt at IVF.
Because of my age, right, quality was probably the issue that we were dealing with. And we changed up the protocol so that it gave us a better shot at egg quality. We would go for round 2. I think I got 10 or 12 eggs in total. So again, I responded really well to the stimulation protocol that they were after. And the same thing happened. All of them took fertilization, but none of them matured. And so when we went back to talk to him a third time, we just had a really honest conversation. If you could change something to make round 3 possibly better, what would that be? And he was honest. The odds aren't great based on what we know right now. And there's not a whole lot more we can change. We threw what we could at the egg quality issue. And I just asked, because I had done some research, then is donor eggs most likely our next option? And he said, absolutely. That would be my recommendation, is that we consider donor eggs and how we feel about those. And he said it's a game changer.
Donor eggs really can be a game changer. Success rates with donor eggs for someone who fits her profile are very high. Of course, donor can be a difficult transition for some, but fortunately, that wasn't the case here.
I also, again, would have been fine adopting children. So the DNA, if you will, of our baby really didn't matter to me. Babies are squishable and lovable, and they're easy to love. So I didn't have passion that I needed to have my DNA per se in the discussion. What I did love about this process is, unlike, say, adoption or surrogacy, I got to carry the baby, meaning I got to control the environment. I got prenatal care under control. I've got, food and diet and exercise and all of those things, which, you want to have a good environment for your baby where you can, right? And it was incredibly important to me to control what I could. And I realized, while I hadn't really thought donor eggs would be for me along the way, it was probably the best fit for me because I actually had more control than the other options would have given me in terms of a good outcome.
Okay, so they were ready to dive right into the egg donor process.
You do get to pick someone who kind of looks and feels like you, if that's what you want, or someone who doesn't, if that's what you want. And we really were specifically focused on people who had eggs already in a cryobank frozen and who had a successful pregnancy under their belt. And we were able to get 12 eggs of hers. 11 of those would survive the thaw process. You do get some attrition there. All of them would take fertilization, and all of them would mature to embryos. The first one we would transfer is the one that would take, and that is our baby. She's here. Rosalie is here. Now, looking back, I can't believe there was ever a version of me that thought I could not have this experience in life.
After years of nothingness and 2 failed IVF cycles, Rosalie was finally here. It's not always the case that the benefit leaders at an organization get to actually use the benefits firsthand, especially a benefit as specific and targeted as a fertility and family building benefit like Progyny. So we had to ask what it meant to be able to use this benefit from her employer, Bread Financial.
It allows you to sort of sit back and say, I'm thankful this company gets it, that they see the value of experience and less frustration, less friction. Core to our business, no friction, right? So this is really just a part of who we are in general, and it always feels good when you can match who you are to what you're doing here on the benefit side and the people side of the house. So for us, that experience, just getting it right, I was able to benefit personally, and that always feels good when you know you got it right for the people because you've sat where they're going to sit.
I want to give a big thank you to Deanna Allison for joining us today and for sharing her story. And I want to thank Bread Financial for being such a great employer and truly looking after their people. If you're listening to this and wondering how you can get these benefits at your place of work, well, I hope this encourages you to talk to your HR department about Progyny. We can even help. Just visit progyny.com/talk-to-HR, where you can find resources that can help out. If you want to connect with us, you can do so on Instagram at This Is Infertility Podcast. If you want to follow Progyny, you can do that at Progyny Inc. Of course, if you're listening on a podcast app, please leave a rating and review. And if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. This Is Infertility is brought to you by Progyny. Please remember, this podcast is not intended to substitute for the personalized expert advice of your physician. I'm Dan Bolger, and this is Infertility.